Okay, for today, we'll be talking about environmental quality management. In this module, we'll be discussing the current status and threats on air, water, and land, as well as the management mechanisms and how to address these threats. So to start, we have the air quality. Now, every year, an estimated 800,000 people worldwide die from lung cancer, cardiovascular, and respiratory diseases. This is because of the outdoor air pollution. Now, the presence of suspended particulates is a key parameter used in determining air quality. Now, there are different sources of air pollutants. So we have various air pollutant. One is the particulate matter. So these are total suspended particles. These are particles with a diameter less than 10 micrometers or less than 2.5 micrometers. The common source of particulate matter are power plants, car exhaust, construction dust, soil, ash, and soot. Another pollutant is the nitrogen oxide. So this is a corrosive light brown gas and it can react with the compounds in the air to make another hazardous pollutant known as ozone. So the source of nitrogen oxide are power plants and car exhausts. Another pollutant is the sulfur dioxide. So this is a colorless gas and has a pungent smell at very high concentrations. So this can be found among the power plants that burn fossil fuels and vehicles running on sulfur-containing fuels such as diesel. Another air pollutant is the carbon monoxide. So this is a odorless and colorless gas and slightly heavier than air. It can also react with other compounds to produce ozone. So this carbon monoxide is present during the burning of gasoline, natural gas, or coal or oil. And it is a product of incomplete combustion. Last air pollutant is the ozone. So ozone concentrations are especially strong in times of weak wind and bright sunlight. This is a secondary pollutant because it is not directly emitted but produced by reactions of other pollutants with oxygen. Now, the urban air pollution mainly comes from fuel combustion in the industrial and transportation sector. The contributors of worsening air quality are the following: inefficient methods of energy use, poor running condition of vehicles, poor roads, traffic congestion, and open burning. Now, the sources of air pollutants are distributed this way. Now, 65% are coming from the mobile sources. What are your mobile sources? These are your motorcycles or your cars. Now, 21% is coming from the stationary sources. These are now your power plants or industrial plants. Now, 14% is coming from open burning of solid waste and kaingin. Now, the air quality in a specific area generally represented by the ambient air quality, which refers to the atmosphere average purity. Now, the results of the ambient air quality monitoring, which includes data taken from sampling stations nationwide, are posted in the website of the Environment Management Bureau. Now, in particular for air, we have the RA 8749 or the Philippine Clean Air Act. Now, this act aims to achieve and maintain clean air that meets the national air quality guideline values for criteria pollutants throughout the Philippines while minimizing the possible associated impacts to the economy. Now, the key features of the RA 8749 are the following: outlines the government's measures to reduce air pollution and incorporate environmental protection into its development plans, promote self-regulation through polluter pays principle and other market-based instruments, set ambient air quality standards and pollutant limitations for industry, links vehicle registration to demonstration of capacity to comply with emission standards set, provides for tax incentives for pollution control devices, provides for the establishment of a research and development program or pollution reduction mechanisms and technologies, bans incineration and smoking in public places, provides for the establishment of airsheds and creation of corresponding airshed governing boards, which may be allowed to set emission quotas by pollution source and implement emission trading systems, provides for punishment by imprisonment or monetary fines or penalties for the violations of the provisions. So these are the key features of the RA 8749. Now, one of the major improvements in the air quality management in the Philippines is the inclusion of PM10 and PM2.5 among the parameters to be monitored on a regular basis. This is important because of the health hazard posed by these smaller particulate sizes, as earlier mentioned. Now, this table shows you the air quality index based on PM10 levels. Now, as a major component of air quality management, the government has instituted a system for monitoring of ambient air quality status as well as for monitoring emissions from pollution sources based on the provisions of the Clean Air Act. Now, the monitoring of for ambient air quality is done through monitoring stations which routinely take measurements of criteria air pollutants. So the air quality monitoring stations are distributed or scattered across the country. Now, we also have air quality monitoring for mobile and stationary sources. So for mobile sources, these are your motor vehicles, your cars. There is a random testing by anti-smoking belching units in Metro Manila. Now, there's also an emission testing through LTO accredited testing centers prior to registration or renewal. Now, for your stationary sources, these are the power plants and industrial plants. Each plant or each corporation or company, they are mandated to do emission self-monitoring and submit reports to the EMB. Now, the EMB will conduct random validation among these power or industrial plants. Now, let's proceed with the water quality. Now, there are various sources of water pollution. So, these may be coming from domestic or municipal wastewater, agricultural wastewater, or industrial wastewater. Now, this table shows the summary of the contribution of different sources of pollution using the BOD as a parameter. BOD stands for biological oxygen demand. Now, as seen in this table, in 1995 to 2001, it is the domestic wastewater that contributes the most. While for 2006 and 2013, it is the agricultural wastewater that contributes the most in terms of water pollution. Now, the biological oxygen demand that was used as a parameter in the table, it is the amount of oxygen consumed by bacteria in the decomposition of organic material or the oxygen required for the oxidation of various chemicals in water such as sulfides, ferrous iron, and ammonia. Now, the sources of water pollution in the domestic sector or municipal sector, the population plays a role in the increase of wastewater in the municipal or domestic sector. Now, the higher the population, the higher the wastewater that may be produced or may be generated. Now, in terms of the agricultural sector, it is still the intensive use of agrochemicals that contributes to the agricultural wastewater. Now, for the industrial sector, the production processes and the scale of production used are the factors for the increase in industrial wastewater. Now, in the Philippines, we have the RA 9275 or the Philippine Clean Water Act. So this act declared the policy of considering the protection, preservation, and revival of the quality of our fresh, brackish, and marine waters alongside with the pursuit of economic growth. These are the key features of the RA 9275. Comprehensive and integrated strategy to prevent and minimize pollution through a multi-sectoral and participatory approach, management of water quality based on watershed, river basin, or water resources region called water quality management areas, establishment of governing boards for per WQMA to implement effective management system including effluent trading and other site-specific schemes deemed appropriate, body classification standards and effluent discharge standards, discharge permitting system for regulated water pollutants, prohibition of discharge dumping of infectious medical waste, sewage sludge, solid waste, prohibited chemicals, substances or pollutants listed under the Toxic Substances, Hazardous, and Nuclear Waste Control Act in water bodies, prohibition of discharging, injecting, or allowing to enter into the soil anything that would pollute groundwater, penalty structure requiring a fine for every day of violation of discharging untreated wastewater, and punishment by imprisonment plus a fine per day of violation for failure to undertake cleanup operations willfully. So these are the key features of the RA 9275. Another policy on in terms of water quality is the PD 979 or the Marine Pollution Decree. Now, this PD declared a national policy to prevent and control the pollution of seas by the dumping of waste and other matter which creates hazards to human health, harm living resources and marine life, damage amenities, or interfere with the legitimate uses of the sea within the territorial jurisdiction of the Philippines. Um, Another is the RA 993, the Philippine Coast Guard Law. Now, this law states the powers and functions of the Philippine Coast Guard. So the following are the functions of the PCG. So to enforce laws, promulgate and administer rules and regulations for the protection of marine environment and resources from offshore sources or pollution, to develop oil spill response, containment, and recovery capabilities against ship-based pollution. Now, all of these national policies are anchored with the international commitments in water quality. So we have the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So this establishes the national sovereignty over marine resources lying within coastal waters and aims to provide countries with incentive to better management these resources by obligating parties or states to protect and preserve the marine environment. Another is the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships or MARPOL. It is the main international convention covering prevention of pollution of the marine environment by ships from operational or accidental causes. It aims to minimize pollution of the seas, including dumping, oil, and exhaust pollution. Now, this table shows you the results or the number of the surface water bodies in terms of the inland surface water and the coastal and marine waters. Now, the ambient water quality monitoring in the Philippines is done by regularly taking water samples from designated sampling stations in selected water bodies and having the samples analyzed for key water quality parameters. The key water quality parameters are the following. So, the biological oxygen demand, total suspended solids, phosphates, nitrates, heavy metals, free cyanide, fecal coliform, and total coliform. Now, let's now discuss the land quality management. Now, unfortunately for the Philippines, the country has not adopted a national standard or strategy for establishing land quality that could be used as a basis for comprehensive and integrated management, monitoring, and regular reporting of its state. There's little effort that has been expended nationally and even internationally to document how land is being used and the corresponding effects of how land is being used on the land quality, hence the absence of such standards. Now, let's talk about two things for the land quality management. One is the land use management, and the other is the management of the physical soil quality. Now, the land use management has great implications on the totality of external conditions affecting the life, development, and survival. Now, for the Philippines, we have comprehensive zoning ordinances and their corresponding land use plans, as well as proper waste management in dealing our land use. Now, in particular, we have the following policies. The PD 933 or Creating Human Settlements Commission. So this is the function of Human Settlements Commission is to liberate our human communities from blight, congestion, and hazard and to promote their development and modernization. Also, to preserve and promote a dynamic balance between the physical beauty of our land and waters on the one hand, and the handiwork of human technology on the other. Another policy is the RA 7279, or the Urban Development and Housing Act. So in here, it is stated the rational use and development urban land in order to bring about, among others, reduction in urban dysfunctions, particularly those that adversely affect public health, safety, and ecology. Now, the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board, or HLURB, have the oversight mandate in implementing land use management regulations in coordination with the local government units, or LGUs. Now, HLURB has been renamed as Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development in 2019. Now, the major land use zones, such as residential, commercial, industrial, were respected, but inconsistencies of the actual land development with these plans are actually very common. Along with this is also the challenge of proper solid waste management. The way solid waste are managed may be considered as an important parameter for land quality. Now, for the management of the physical quality of the soil, the government has not yet adopted soil quality standards for the purposes of regulating, monitoring, and managing pollution, contamination, and risk for its various uses. However, there are significant studies regarding establishing soil quality standards for purposes of agricultural activities have been conducted. Now, in terms of land quality degradation, soil erosion is the prominent form of land quality degradation, particularly in the Philippines. So, soil erosion in the Philippines is a major threat to sustainable production on sloping lands where many subsistence farmers carry out food and fiber production. It was estimated by the Bureau of Soils and Water Management that about 623 million metric tons of soil are lost annually. Now, these are the physical land quality indicators that may be used. One is the biological productivity, considering its actual and potential, extent and impacts of soil degradation, including erosion, sanitation, the annual and long-term balance of nutrients, including the exported and imported by the cropping systems, the degree and type of contamination or pollution by direct application, atmospheric transport, or the changes in organic matter content, as well as the water holding capacity. Now, this time we'll be discussing the management of environmental quality stressors. Now, managing the potential stressors to environmental quality is an important factor in attaining the country's environmental quality management goals. So, the following are the potential stressors to environmental quality. One is the impact of human activities. Second is the use of toxic chemicals and hazardous waste generation. The solid waste generation. Now, first is the management of the environmental impacts of human activities. Now, as mentioned in previous modules, that it is the environmental impact assessment as an important tool in environmental management and for attaining sustainable development, as it covers a wide range of environmental as well as social parameters. Now, in particular, the PD 1586 requires the any person, partnership, or corporation that has environmentally critical project to have an environmental compliance certificate issued by the president or his duly authorized representative prior to undertaking or operation of any project. Now, this time we'll be discussing the management of the toxic substance and hazardous waste. Now, toxic substances and hazardous waste are among the most critical stressors that should be managed to protect environmental quality. Now, the adverse impacts of these materials, once released to the environment, are very difficult to address. Now, the existing national policies on the management of toxic chemicals and hazardous waste are shaped by the country's commitment to the following international conventions. One is the Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Waste and Their disposal, or the Basel Convention. the Convention on the Prior Informed Consent Procedure for Certain Hazardous Chemicals and Pesticides on International Trade, or the Rotterdam Convention. And lastly, the Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, or the Stockholm Convention. Now, in the Philippines, we have in particular the RA 6969, or the Toxic Substances, Hazardous, and Nuclear Waste Control Act. Now, this law aims to regulate, restrict, or prohibit the importation, manufacture, processing, sale, distribution, use, and disposal of chemical substances and mixtures that present unreasonable risk to human health. It likewise prohibits the entry, even in transit, of hazardous and nuclear waste and their disposal into the Philippine territorial limits for whatever purpose, and to provide advancement and facilitate research and studies on toxic chemicals. Now, let's talk about the management of the solid waste. Now, solid waste management remains to be one of the biggest environmental management challenges the country faces today, especially in urban areas. Now, based on Waste Analysis and Characterization Study, or WACS, in Metro Manila in 2013, kitchen wastes are the greatest volume of the total solid waste, followed by plastic. Now, we have a specific law dealing with solid waste, that is the RA 9003, or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act. Now, this law is intended to institute a systematic, comprehensive, and ecological solid waste management program that shall cover proper segregation, collection, storage, treatment, and disposal of solid waste. Now, these are the key features of the RA 9003. Now, the creation of the National Solid Waste Management Commission, the National Ecology Center, and the Solid Waste Management Board in every province, city, and municipality. Now, it also requires the LGUs to formulate 10-year solid waste management plans, mandatory segregation of solid waste to be conducted primarily at the source, such as the household, institutional, industrial, commercial, and agricultural sources, setting of minimum requirements to ensure systematic collection and transport of waste and the proper protection of garbage collectors' health, establishment of reclamation programs and buyback centers for recyclable and toxic materials, promotion of eco-labeling in local products and services, prohibition on non-environmentally acceptable products and packaging, establishment of materials recovery facility in every barangay or cluster of barangays, prohibition against the use of open dump sites, setting of guidelines or criteria for the establishment of controlled dumps and sanitary landfills, provision of rewards, incentives, both monetary and non-monetary, financial assistance, grants, and the like to encourage local government units and the general public to undertake effective solid waste management, and promotion of research on solid waste management and environmental education in the formal and non-formal sectors. So these are the key features of RA 9003. Now, in terms of the adjudication and role of courts, it is the Pollution Adjudication Board that adjudicates pollution cases from all over the country. Now, the rules of procedure for environmental cases, specifically for the issuance of temporary and environmental protection orders, writ of kalikasan, and other related procedures, have been tested in a number of cases related to the implementation of environmental quality management laws. Among the areas of environmental management in the country, environmental quality management has the richest experience in terms of adjudication and participation of courts. For the last topic, the devolution, decentralization, and co-management. So these three terminologies were already discussed in the previous module. Now we'll just focus on the co-management programs existing in the Philippines. One is the ADAP and Estero water body program and the establishment of the water quality management areas. And we also have another program for the designation of airsheds. Now, these programs are implemented in the different levels of the government as well as the participation of the different stakeholders. So this shows that the policies or the programs in the country are actually devolved, decentralized, and being co-managed. Now, just have a quick review of what we have discussed in this module. So we have talked about the current status, trends and threats to air, water, and land quality, as well as existing management mechanisms to address the threats. We also discussed some major laws governing the air, water, and land quality management standards, as well as the management of environmental quality stressors. So these are just the following: RA 8749 or the Philippine Clean Air Act, RA 9275 or the Philippine Clean Water Act, R 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act. So these are just some of the major laws that we have discussed. Now, we also learned that the Pollution Adjudication Board adjudicates pollution cases from all over the country. And lastly, we have discussed that environmental management programs are co-managed by the different levels of the government as well as the different stakeholders or sectors. Now, that ends our Module 4, the Environmental Quality Management.